Thank you, Maestro Rick. The date is September 2nd in the year of our Lord 2014. The time is 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Alaska, and 3 p.m. Hawaii time. I'm going to start the call by opening with prayer. Heavenly Father, I pray for you to strengthen and guide each and every person that is on or will hear this call with your blessings. Give them willful use of the gift to discern your messages apart from the chatter. I give praiseful thanks for each person whose heart you touch with the understanding of the message we bring forth on this call of and for Love Chapter's direction as the People Helping People Network. I am humbled in awe of your presence in my life, in the lives of our Love Chapter's founding teams, and in all that is forward direction of Love Chapters, to which I am grateful. I ask your continued blessings and thankfully praise you through Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, this week we will be having Rick Hildago's Weekly News Spotlight, as well as any updates or topics of the law pertaining to our private ecclesiastical bylaws, Love Chapter's Earth Church, and affiliate churches as a corporation sole, or questions pertaining to the lawful side of the Pod Magic system. Tim Bueller will chime in with an educational piece pertaining to the water we drink or food we eat. I love listening to Tim because he isn't just speaking about the topics from someone else's knowledge banks. He's speaking firsthand from experience. Much of what he is doing in the field of aquaponic gardening is a result of documented trials, which should get quite interesting as the winter months bear down upon us here. Well, South Dakota, northern plains, gets a little cold. His studies on the structure of water are as well an ongoing study. The documentation of such studies is what will be presented to the Community Love Chapter offices for implementation within and for the community by the community's efforts. It is important to actually understand the value of what is being documented, because although our Pod Magic System module equips our offices for basic sustainability of those within the community, it is the long-term community sustainability that begins the healing process by our efforts of working as a community to sustain a quality of human life and taking responsibility in caring for the earth in which supports us. In the future, Ruth will be joining us with a business synopsis from some of our modules, of course without name mention. Unless we have a highlighted call segment on a particular module by a company representative, which we will do from time to time. She will also highlight different natural health maintenance products that are not a product of modules within the Pod Magic system, but rather items you purchase from local retailers that are also on the list of stocked items for the Love Chapter offices. Anthony will be working alongside of me when it comes to Kids on the Edge of Excellence, and will help me bring forth creative incentives for the direction of Kids on the Edge. Anthony is a picture of teamwork. Kids on the Edge is a spin-off area of David House and Love's Ranch. Kind of my baby, one might say. But I am needed in the area of propagating Love Chapter offices, keeping websites and YouTubes up to date, which I'm not doing perfectly well at, but doing better moving forward, and keeping Love Chapters as a whole entity moving forward. And for now, that does not allow me to work with Kids on the Edge full time. It needs to be delegated to the best team member, team player for that job. And there's a little message there, and if you didn't hear it this time, you'll hear it in the future. So now, if you've been counting, that would leave 3 active team members and 2 church members unaccounted for. Fran, the church treasurer, along with Tim Bueller, Danielle Bueller and Desiree Mitchell, Earth USA and church secretaries, and Lowell, who at the time works in the background of what will become our assurance program, rather than insurance program, assurance program for all LOV offices and eventually communities. Lastly is Rich Nebelsack, who is our master word grinder, and along with some of our members in another group, researches natural law or the Creator's law and how it pertains to people as the governing body. Now, some would expect Rich to look like a well-suited Einstein, carrying maybe a pointer stick and wearing wire-rimmed glasses, but that's not our Rich. That's not our Rich at all. Our Rich is a well-educated farmer. He looks like a farmer in his denim coveralls and baseball cap. And because he's heading into harvest season, he may not be able to speak on the live open calls for a while. But when he does, I will tell you, it will be well articulated. So that's the team update, so to speak. So now I'd like to continue with the topic geared to my current role as founder of LOV Chapters Earth and USA. Founder, director. Sounds like a pretty important title, doesn't it? When I speak with people in general, they always want to know what I do for work. And I usually answer them with, I don't work a real job, but I do work very hard as a team member with a humanitarian group called LOV Chapters Earth USA. You see, we all have titles, but it's how we use them that will allow or not allow our titles to define us. I am the founder of LOV Chapters, but the vision that defines both LOV Chapters and myself is and always will be a product of teamwork. Actually, the apprentice of the entrepreneurial team spirit. So yes, I am the founder of LOV Chapters by title, but what defines me most is being a team player. You don't have to be great to start a LOV Chapter office for your state, your region, or your community. You just have to start to become a great asset to your community as a LOV Chapter office team player. I'm sure there's many more people in many more states that have been thinking about a LOV Chapter office, but because someone has not stepped up for their state, they're in a wait-and-see mode. In the states we are actively working with different people on founding the state office, many haven't been able to gather the other 7 members to complete their office team so that they can actively begin populating LOV offices around their state. I spoke last week about titles, labels, and the size shoes you wear. The majority of people are wearing shoes that are comfortable, but comfort is a limitation, meaning that until we step outside of the comfort, we are not really living. We are not at the helm of our own life. We aren't splashing any water, but rather existing within the confines of our comfort zone, doing the best not to make any waves. Because of that, our dreams are held hostage within our imagination by our limiting beliefs of ourselves, or fear, as an acronym of false evidence appearing real. Our dreams and visions we claim to be our whys are more like mirages, undeveloped dreams, foggy, unstable visions. And I ask, why? Another acronym. Why haven't you begun? Why haven't you become? Why haven't you pushed out of your comfort zone? Why haven't you believed in yourself? Why have you been afraid to take off your shoes and step barefoot on the rocky road? You can't fail at something if you don't ever begin. Nor can you fail if you begin and never quit. If you never begin to pursue your dreams, you will never truly know what they can aspire to become when you set them in motion, when you give them freedom, unbound by limiting beliefs. If your whys aren't big enough to move you thinking visionary, then likely they are the product of soothing grooming by the idiot box, or the limiting beliefs of your friends and family, which tend to render all whys and dreams into solitary confinement controlled by fear. The kind of debilitating fear that is an acronym for forget everything and run. Another acronym that has been an active part of Love Chapters that would also be beneficial part of everyone's personal life is PDCA. Plan, do, check, and adjust. What PDCA means is assessing our lives or Love Chapters in the case of my team or your team to ensure it is 1, moving towards the goals that have been set or defining new ones. 2, following and doing the things that keep the goals in a forward direction or keep you going after the goals in a forward direction. 3, checking our progress. And 4, adjust any infractions where needed to correct the course of movement towards our goals. PDCA. What is your why? Can you do it now, or does it require funding, people, or tools that are not at your immediate access? Have you written down your why or your goal or your dream? Have you outlined it to discover what it takes to accomplish its fruition? Have you identified the steps it takes to get from point A to point B? If the P of PDCA also applies to the creation of a Love Chapter office or the maintenance of a Love Chapter office, well, of course, the initial planning of the basic operations and funding has been done by the Love Earth USA team and is under constant PDCA by the team. But for you to found a Love Chapters location, you must also apply PDCA. You have to know why you believe you need Love Chapters in your state, region, or community. It has to become a why driven by belief. Is the community operating at optimum levels? Are the people within the community aware of the issues that face their community, their country, their sustainability, the economy, and what plans are in place to secure the community in any catastrophic event caused by nature or man? The P is for plan. The plan would be identifying the issues and how they might better be resolved through the teamwork of a Love Chapter office. D of PDCA is for do. Now that you have identified the plan of your whys or benefit of a Love Chapter office, you need to do. Doing, in the case of Love Chapters, means gathering a team that will work together to facilitate the Love Chapter office, no matter what it takes, so you can get to the doing part of the Pod Magic system, which will ultimately fund your personal whys and the financial needs of rolling out the Love Chapter office within the community. C is for check. And check basically means to assess your do actions to see if they align with your P or planning actions. A Love Chapter office will not fall from the sky on grand opening day all funded and ready to operate. It is a process, but one each of us grows through. In other words, it is a long process. You have to learn to be a team. You have to work as a team, and it is a process that each one of us needs to grow through to become a good team player, a reliable team player. The doing, or D, is often where fear halts the plans because it journeys outside of our comfort zone. And C for checking, or checking, is where we often don't care to admit our true findings because often it's a reflection of us or it exposes our fears. C is why we need strong teams with good, ethical members, decision-minded members, so that the findings of our checks will be truly assessed. I mean, what good is checking if you're not going to truly assess the checking, assess what needs to be done? A stands for the action of adjusting ourselves back on the track of our plan, knowing what the pitfalls of the D action or doing were. Adjustment is important because we are all well aware that repeating the same cycle, P and D, plan and do, will continue to give us the same C, or results of checking, which will keep us grounded at point A, with point B growing harder to identify on a fogged path. So as we move through tonight's call, I want to leave you with a homework assignment. Don't worry, I'm not checking, but I will if you want to send it to me and want to share it on one of our calls. The assignment is to PDCA your life, or your vision on paper as you know it should read. Leave a space between each, and then go back in a different color ink or font if you're doing the assignment online, and mark a true assessment of what you have done towards this life plan or vision. If you are truthful, it'll show you what adjustments you will need to make. Part 2 of the homework is to assess why you would be a good team player on a Love Chapter team, what you would bring to the table, and who you know that would benefit personally by becoming a super team player on your team. Then, tell me all about your community and what your Love Chapter office could do to benefit your community, the people in your community. Part 2 is the part I would truly like you to share with me. You don't have to, but I'd like it. Part 3 is personal. Why have you not done the P and D of your PDCA for a Love Chapter office in your community? Do you have a why for your life that's big enough? Does your community have a need big enough to warrant a Love Chapter office? You keep this one. But PDCA it further now and then. You just might surprise yourself. Okay, so the acronym WHY, or WHY, is for why haven't you? It's a question you need to ask yourself. Why haven't you? The next acronym is FEAR. FEAR, fear, is false evidence appearing real, or forget everything and run, which comes down to choice. Freedom. And PDCA is one of the best tools we have to navigate life along with the Bible, which is plan, do, check, and adjust. And before I turn the floor over to Rick's Weekly News, I want to leave you with a statement by Henry Ford. Listen carefully. Coming together is a beginning. Staying together is a process. Working together is a success. So, have at it, Rick. The floor is all yours. I can't wait to hear the nightly news.
Thank you, Trinity. This is Rick. Just a quick technical announcement before we get into that. If you're experiencing a delay in our broadcast tonight, there's probably a lot of pinging going on the line. For some reason, we're experiencing a lot of delays on this board tonight, and a lot of it's cutting out. For me, I know, and I'm sure for you. So we're going to do our best, and if you want to hear the clear version. The playback should be crystal clear. With that said, here comes the news. Hello and good evening. This is your host, Rick Hidalgo, and this is Love Chapters News. Tonight in the news, we're going to talk about the crossroads that humanitarian organizations find themselves at as they begin to answer some very difficult questions. What you're about to hear is an interview with Save the Children, which is a 501c3 organization. Afterwards, we're going to discuss some key points.
Humanitarianism is at a crossroads. We are facing challenges on a scale we have never seen before.
All around the world, we see that humanitarian independence is being challenged.
The number of children and the marginalized families suffering due to disasters is increasing every day.
Climate change is changing our world. That means more disasters affecting more of the world's poorest children.
The scale of need and the pressure and the challenge that we're under is frankly frightening. The challenges faced by humanitarians today are truly unprecedented. But there is enormous and growing humanitarian need. How the humanitarian system responds to these immense challenges will define how effectively we deliver aid to the people who need it most in the future.
We're seeing a number of trends happening all at the same time. We've got climate change, which is changing the weather around us. It's making the world hotter, more extreme, more unpredictable in terms of the weather. We've got increasing population, so there's more people who are going to be, at risk. And we've got different patterns about where people live, how they use the land, including deforestation. All of these things are happening at the same time, and they're all combining to change the face of disasters.
Now more people live in cities than live in rural areas. It's inherently more difficult to respond in an urban environment to big natural disasters than in a rural environment.
And particularly in an urban context like we've had with this earthquake, where Port-au-Prince was the nerve center of all the activities in Haiti, it's particularly difficult.
The number of people affected by disasters is very much likely to increase. So what we have to prepare for is, unfortunately, a greater level of response to disasters.
To improve the way we deal with natural disasters, the most important thing is to prepare better for them in advance. Disaster risk reduction, like teaching children how to get to high ground in a flood, is absolutely vital.
In a country like Haiti, it is extremely important to have a permanent disaster risk reduction program going on, particularly for an agency like Save the Children, because we are a very fragile country environmentally, so we are very much exposed to natural disasters. So this should be a priority in terms of lessening or minimizing what could be, as we just witnessed in the recent earthquake, very, very important damages.
So it's absolutely important that to mitigate losses and to prevent any loss of life and to protect the existing resources and all the development investment that we have made, it's very important that working for disaster risk reduction is actually a stitch in time.
You also have to get much better prepared, and that means very practical things such as stockpiles of aid in certain locations in key countries where we know the risk is high. So preparedness and disaster risk reduction have to be ramped up on a global scale, and it's going to cost a lot of money. The idea of humanitarianism and the delivery of humanitarian aid is that it's impartial, and that means we respond based on need alone, irrespective of any other consideration, politically or in terms of ethnicity or race or any other consideration. Those are not humanitarian considerations.
It goes across cultures, it goes across religions, it goes across centuries. This sentiment that the most vulnerable people should not be dying in large numbers. They should be protected from conflict and from natural disasters.
In the last decade, we have seen a lot of political consideration come into the delivery of aid. Emergencies happen where they happen, and there is either a high geopolitical consideration or a low geopolitical consideration. So where we are looking at countries that experience complex emergencies, where there are aspects such as the war on terror in play, inevitably political consideration impacts on the delivery of aid. In order to counter all the political pressure that we now see exerted onto humanitarian responses and all those push and pull factors that exist within organisations, what we need is a re-emergence of strong humanitarian leadership based on principles.
We think that now is the time for the new Emergency Relief Coordinator, Valerie Amos, to really demonstrate humanitarian leadership. We think there needs to be strong leadership from the top saying this is what humanitarian is, this is what we can offer in the worst places of the world, and it's not military, it's not going to fix all the solutions, but it's crucially important, it does save lives, and we know how to do it. We know how to do it well.
Criticisms of the humanitarian aid system from the public and politicians are particularly prominent at the moment. This has included criticising the speed and coordination of aid responses, for example, in Haiti. It's also included criticising the motives of NGOs and other humanitarian organisations in complex emergencies and conflicts like in Afghanistan. Some of the criticisms of humanitarian aid have been misplaced, but some of them are well-founded, and it's absolutely vital that humanitarians are always looking for ways to improve the aid that they deliver.
We see accountability to disaster-affected populations as a critical piece of making aid better, partially because it's the feedback loop. If you're putting resources in, if you're trying to ensure your aid is based on need, but you don't get that feedback, then how can you say you're doing the right job?
We as humanitarian practitioners are always striving to improve the way we respond to the communities and enhance our own accountability to them. Being accountable to the children and to their families is the highest priority in the humanitarian system we must achieve.
If we improve accountability to the aid population, we will no doubt improve aid effectiveness. Because it's not as effective if you don't check that it's working and if you don't have the right feedback that it's working. And it will be aid that we can be proud of and that donors can be proud of and that the people on the ground can say, yes, we are happy that this aid came in, our lives are better and lives were saved and we were part of it, we were part of the solution.
We know there is a rocky road ahead, and we know that the challenges we face as humanitarians are never going to be easy. But we do know what we need to do. We know how we need to change so that we make the system better for children and their families and all those millions of people around the world who need our help. If we make those improvements, we can be confident that we will save many more children's lives in the future.
What you just heard was an interview with Save the Children. And just for the record, any opinions or any ideas put forth by Save the Children doesn't necessarily reflect the ideas or opinions of this humanitarian organization called Love Chapters. To begin with, we'd like to start by kind of outlining what they perceive the challenges of humanitarianism to be. First of all, they see the main challenge as the challenge to respond. Okay, and within the response, the challenge of response, there's subcategories. Number one, environmental changes. Their idea of urban response versus rural response, because the urban populations are so are in such a growth pattern, while rural gets smaller and smaller every year as people move into the big cities. Number two, preparation, risk reduction. Of course, educating the people to understand what needs to happen in the case of an emergency, and then stockpiling aid. And they even mentioned how much money would need to be raised within that particular situation. If something catastrophic were to happen, the stockpiles would be reduced in, the matter of one evening, in a short period of time, and it had to be replenished. And the way these organizations do their work is to raise money via contributions. And then the third subcategory within that response is the need. The because so much of what's done humanitarianly is need-based, and within that need-based humanitarianism, there's a political consideration, geopolitical considerations with the terrorism push that there is these days, and the different things within the geopolitical spectrum. There's always a lot of red tape and interference from governments who should be the first to comply. And then also a call for strong leadership within the need for that, because of the geopolitical consideration. To have strong leadership in place would bring, they believe, balance to that whole picture. And then finally, they talked very briefly about criticisms within the system itself, the humanitarian system. And that is today where we want to put our focus in, is not into criticizing these organizations, because I think they're doing the best they can while operating inside the box that they're operating in. But rather than focus ourselves on a small box and trying to utilize a system that is broken to bring humanitarian aid to a great number of people through corrupt banks, through corrupt banking systems, through corrupt geopolitical landscapes, and through tyranny all abroad, all around the world, and even staged terrorism and those kind of things. The criticism can really be placed on trying to utilize that system to bring anything that's peaceful, that's God-inspired or even people-inspired into that system, because it's not going to happen. It cannot happen in the critical way that it needs to. The only way for this to be done is to step outside of that box and do some critical thinking and ask ourselves, what good are we doing? And we're creating a system that's top-heavy, and that most of the funding that goes into it actually goes into the infrastructure of the idea to begin with, and doesn't even make it to the mouths that need to be fed or to the arms that need to be bandaged. It's very important for us to step outside of this box of tyranny and begin to look at the humanitarian process itself and ask ourselves, can it better be done by the people who are right there on the ground? Could it be done by, in preparation, creating a condition, a revolution, if you will, amongst the people to start to take self-responsibility, not just responsibility for themselves, but for their neighbors, and not just responsibility for their communities, but also responsibility financially for themselves, in a sense being self-governing, so that they can contribute from their own abundance. We've heard many times that all wars are bankers' wars, and most of the conditions that we see all around the world, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a tsunami, whether it's a bombing, no matter what it is, most of these conditions are all conditions that were really man-made. Okay, whether they were man-made because of some kind of a problem between two countries, or whether they were man-made because of some kind of weather system being manufactured, or whether they were man-made for whatever reason, they're all man-made. These are not things that normally happen through nature. There was probably once a day where we could say that there was such thing as a natural disaster, but I think in the day that we live in, so little is actually natural in the way of disaster. So little of anything is natural anymore. We've stepped away from nature. We've pushed away nature's God, and we've really begun to try to rule ourselves with an iron fist. And we've imposed our own law form on top of our Creator's law form in order to hide it. We've kicked them out of our courthouses. We've kicked them out of the city blocks. We've kicked them off of all the public territory. We can't display anything that would be remotely God in any one of these places. So, given the condition that we are in the world today, I think it's very important that we begin to take a look at moving forward in an out-of-the-box fashion. And of course, I believe that out-of-the-box fashion fits in perfectly with Love Chapter's Earth Church as a private ecclesiastical organization that is there for humanitarian purposes. We enrich ourselves for the purpose of going out and creating the world that we want to live in. I'll say it again. We enrich ourselves so that we can go out and create the world that we want to live in. Why should we contract with people that we know are up to no good when we can contract with one another? Isn't that really where we want to go? Isn't that really what the whole intent of populating Earth was? The very first command in the Bible was be fruitful and multiply. I don't think that there was ever a limitation placed on that. The idea that our population's growing too big is preposterous. When you can fit everybody comfortably into the state of Texas in the world, I would say that's a totally preposterous myth that we have a population crisis. Look, the only crisis we have is man-made. If we take man out of the equation and we allow people to interact one to another, and we educate ourselves in our communities and eliminate that middleman, I think we begin to see freedom and liberty rise up out of the ashes, and I think we would be seeing the development of a new system that would literally take over the world. I think it's God-inspired. I think it's about time that it happened, and I think that it's not going to happen unless we each step up and we get it done. So with that said, this has been another edition of the Nightly News, Love Chapter's Nightly News. My name is Rick Hidalgo. God bless you all. See you next week. With that, I turn the floor over to Tim Bueller.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks you for that great talk there. I was just listening to a CD today talking about kind of the same thing, that if we keep following the status quo and we want to change things, maybe it's time to think outside of the box or to do something different than to keep following that status quo. So, and I want to thank Trinity for her talk earlier. That was super. Tonight I want to talk about, I've been talking about water and how added clarity is helping to purify water. So I thought I'd go back to kind of the beginning of how it kind of started. So this is on how this Japanese doctor cracked the code of healing water. And I hope I get his name halfway pronounced here anyway. Dr. Shiman was charged with the task of finding a way to clean up radioactive waste after World War II disaster in Japan. One day in 1968, he was sitting on a beach, admiring a tree growing out of a rock. There was something very peculiar about this rock, because there was no visible nutrients surrounding it. He wondered how it could be surviving. So naturally, he decided to study this rock it was growing out of. The rock contained biotite, or black mica, a powerful combination of Earth's naturally occurring minerals embedded in granite. He worked with black mica for 20 years, and he discovered that when used in the proper way, you can use these sulfite minerals to activate water naturally ability to cleanse itself of chemicals and natural contaminants unlike anything else known to science. Because this mineral contained a high concentration of ionic sulfate minerals which have a magnetic property, Dr. Shimon Izai created a patent process to extract the mineral from biotite for water purification. Eventually, he became the leading authority on treatment and cleaning of water in Japan. His extraordinary discovery has been used in the treatment of raw sewage and wastewater for use in agriculture, horticulture, and aquatox. Because this extract works with nature, it doesn't just remove the bad stuff from your water. Within 72 hours, it actually neutralizes everything and turns it harmless to the human body. Black mica extract has been tested and proven by EPA certified labs to remove heavy metals like chromosome 6 and turn it into harmless chromosome 3. It has been tested and proven to completely remove fluoride. It has been tested and proven to remove over 80 different types of violet organic compound. It's been tested and proven to remove E. coli and chloroform bacteria. It has been tested and proven to remove chlorine and chloramine. So that's just some of the many different things, but the big thing to remember here is that it neutralizes everything and turns it harmless to the human body. And then it coagulates it, brings it together to help it settle out of the bottom. And like I said, in my case, it's just a yellow film that settles out in the bottom. And then another part about water, and water is a really kind of fabulous thing that we still don't completely understand. And most of you probably are familiar with how it has 3 phases, right? Liquid, solid, and gas. But did you know that there is actually a 4th phase? About 100 years ago, a physical scientist by the name of Sir William Hardy suggested that there was a 4th phase of water, a phase that was in between a liquid form and a solid form. Today, scientists are beginning to see that Hardy was right. There indeed is a 4th phase of water, a liquid crystalline water, also called structure water or hexagon water. If you look at the clusters of water molecules in regular water, they tend to look like zigzag worms. The bonds between the molecules constantly break and reform. There is no structure, and the water tends to be haphazardly put together. The unique thing about structured water is that it comes together and forms organized hexagonal bonds that are typically only found in solid form or ice. So what's the big deal about all this? The structure to the water reveals hidden qualities and characteristics that are entirely separate from original or ordinary water. Scientists are baffled by this phenomenon, and a new science is beginning to emerge as they explore the possibility of this crystal-like water. Okay, so now here comes the part I am excited about. The minerals in added clarity have the ability to turn your ordinary water into this super-powered liquid crystalline water. This hexagonal structure to water literally brings it to life. The water begins to vibrate at the same level as healthy human cells do, at 75 hertz. Along with this structure comes what I like to call superpower. The water provides high caliber hydrogenation and detoxification, improves nutrient absorption and cellular communication, and even increases the metabolic efficiency. A great example to explain this phenomenon is given by M.J. Pangman in his book Hexagonal Water, The Ultimate Solution. The one we sent to you with added clarity, whatever. The difference between normal water and hexagonal structured water is similar to the difference between a piece of crystal or of quartz and a quartz crystal. We use crystals to make computers, and there is no way we can use a rock to do the same job, even though the two are chemically the same. Just like in water, the two stones differ from each other only in a structural component. The crystal form is a perfect geometric symmetry, and the stone is not. With this analogy, we can begin to understand the importance of what this means for our water technology. It turns water from, water, that liquid you drink, into water, this mysterious element that we actually know little about, which is full of limitless potential. Dr. Polak, a professor of bioengineering and expert in water and health, has done numerous experiments where he harnesses free energy from the fourth phase water. Now that's kind of interesting. Free energy from water. He figured out how to turn water into a battery. And there's a presentation by Ted's Talk. If you guys wants to check that out, it's called The Fourth Phase Water with Dr. Polak, to get kind of the nitty-gritty on this. So I'll leave it off there, and I'll try some next week on some more talks and stuff on the different part of fourth phase water and what that kind of looks like and what benefit it has to us as far as to the body. And I turn the floor back over to Rick or Trinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. That was wonderful. I really find these interesting. I started studying the structure of water back a while ago, but it was done with music vibration. So hearing about the added clarity and scientific research and proof that, in fact, this does work. And if you understand that your body is filled with 70% water, I believe that's the percentage, 70% water.
It's over 90%.
Is it really? Okay. Yep. I was thinking 70%, but even if you just fix the water that you're taking into your body, then your body is going to recycle the water that is in your bloodstream, going to your brain, and now you're going to get all these minerals that you need, and your body becomes restructured. Or, as you said, metabolic correction. So that was really a good article, and I also have to thank Rick, because that was wonderful news about, well, maybe it wasn't wonderful news. It was very pointed news about other humanitarian groups and the different struggles that they face, and they just don't seem to be willing to change their inside of that box, and so therefore they're meeting their limitations. And I think it really pointed a lot towards Love Chapters and the direction that we have been trying to move into that doesn't face those limitations. So I thought that was a really good article on the news as well, Rick. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to comment on?
Appreciate it, Trinity. This is Rick. It just kind of came, dropped on my lap. So that's why we went there this week. But with that, I'm just going to turn it back over to you. And if you'd like to, if you'd like us to close down, I'm volunteer to pray whenever you'd like that. I yield.
Okay, I have just a little closing point, I guess. I put a post earlier on Facebook in the group room about the buses moving, and last week I stated to get on the bus because God was on the move, which I got from you, Rick, and I just love that saying. I want to be very clear. It's okay if you're not ready to get on the love bus. It's not for everyone. It's just for whom it's for. I tried to soften my call for leaders back a year ago, but with continual PDCA, I realized there are some things in life that are just not for everyone, and that includes being a Love Chapters Earth USA officer. The current world news and the mainstream media is disheartening, and if Love Chapters is going to help resolve even a speck of issues plaguing the world, our country, or even the smallest piece of the world sector, our communities, it's going to take leaders in every community, which means there will have to be leadership at the state level to identify those regions and communities. They have to be willing to get out there in front and stand for the people of their state and the purpose of Love Chapters to educate on eradication of societal ills and the value for value basis we operate on, which kind of is what we mean about being outside of the box and not sitting and waiting to see what happens. That's not a leader. That's a follower. We have a whole society faithfully following the leader of a corporation whose purpose is not in the best interest of the populace, but rather in their demise. Many are faithfully following the leadership from a pulpit, tainted with man's corporate law, modifying the natural law of the Creator, and that message delivered in servitude to please the corporate God. It takes leaders to stand up against the stampede of blindfolded followers, and by leading from the front, help each one to remove them to see the truth. The vision of Love Chapters is to bring love worldwide, but after years of struggle and trying to smoke out leaders, we have no choice but to roll out the bus in South Dakota. Maybe Love Chapters will never get beyond South Dakota. Sad, but true. We've held back for far too long, so now the bus is moving. You can get on the bus anytime, but please, don't hail the bus to stop unless your team is together, all 8, and have their Pod Magic ticket in hand and $20 for patches each. Once you get on the bus, all else needed will be given to you, inclusive of the full itinerary. If you want to learn more about Love Chapters or the Pod Magic system or Kids on the Edge of Excellence or any other programs in the works, you'll have to be active in our group room on Facebook and visit all of our websites, which will be posted underneath the call updates in the Facebook group room. Our call platform is moving towards updates and education for those on the bus. Cookies and cream for everyone else on the platform. Browse through the dream destinations of your imagination and purpose-driven missions written on your heart while you wait for whatever you're waiting for. The bus will stop for you whenever you're ready to roll up your sleeves and become the leader you see in the mirror. Now, I bet you're wondering how this ties into Kids on the Edge of Excellence, right? Well, we talk about education and self-education, reading and community service, art, and more. But most want to categorize Kids on the Edge as some little reading club. We are teaching leadership. After all, who will be leading tomorrow? Where are all the mentors? Let me tell you where they are. They are you and me. They are your neighbors, your grocer, your mechanic, your spouse. They're within your community. They just don't know it yet. Isn't that kind of scary? The stampede of the blind leading the blind. There is no leadership within our communities. The leadership is the TV, the internet, the drug dealer, the buyer of alcohol, and the long-reaching arm of the corporation via the corporate school. I see the future of our children and the discretion of the choices that we as adults must make today. How many times have you heard me say teamwork makes the dream work? That's what Kids on the Edge is all about. It is the leaders in the community that bring together the community teamwork for the future leaders of tomorrow. Kids on the Edge is way more than some kids' reading club, but it takes leaders, teams, right now, today, to create that platform. So while you're on the platform eating cookies and cream, lift the blindfold a hair and take a look around. If we want change, it's up to us to create it through teamwork and leadership. And I personally think the next generation is worth it. So there will be some more on Kids on the Edge, but I needed to explain to you the basis of where Kids on the Edge comes from. It comes from us, you and me and all the people in all of our communities. That's where Kids on the Edge is created from. Leadership. So, if nobody else has anything to say, then I will ask Rick or somebody to close in prayer.
Thank you, Trinity. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together as your people tonight. We ask that you would lead us, guide us, teach us, and mold us. Make us into the leaders that you have called us to be. And we ask now that you will just help us to engage our community, not just through love chapters, but as men of virtue and women of virtue. And as we go forth, we ask that your protection be upon us as we move forward. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.